This next section of the program is going to highlight three specific projects that have been done in recent history anyway. And I just want to check in with our speakers. We have Andy Chamberlain, Billy Mitchell, and Jeff Stoltzfus. We may want to have one of the presentations come back after lunch, just so we can break at noon. Do any of you need to be someplace else after lunch? Cool. All right, so first speaker and the first project. The project title is Scrub. And I'm not going to tell you what that stands for, because I think Andy Chamberlain is going to tell you. So Andy Chamberlain is my colleague at the University of Vermont Extension Agricultural Engineering Program. He's a pretty remarkable guy, I have to say. And I'm also involved in this project, and it's been a lot of fun with great partners. Andy, take it away.
Well, good morning. I'm Andy Chamberlain from the University of Vermont Extension, and like Chris introduced me, I'm part of the Scrub project, which is an FSOP project for sanitization and cleaning resources for your farm business. This is a multi-state team made up with several people, a few listed there. Billy, who's going to speak later, who's here as well. Philip, MSU, whatever, long list. The barriers of resources are scattered resources, and I think we're all familiar with that. We primarily are trying to educate the growers with these resources, and so trying to make them straightforward and user-friendly for somebody who is very busy and whose produce safety is not top of mind. There are still gaps and questions to be answered, obviously. And what are the digestible ways of communicating and sharing this knowledge? Because everybody learns a little bit differently. So throughout this project, we've really experimented with and ran with several different ways of outreach. Typically, these could include Twilight Highlights, which are online workshops, but they've also came to fruition in peer learning and small groups, for example, on-farm cleaning tool demonstrations. We do one-on-one and in-person technical assistance, so that could be a Zoom call or a Teams call virtually to talk about a specific farm and their situation, or one-on-one with the farm tackling a project. While we're doing these things, we as educators are also actively listening, and that is, I think, a key part of this project as well, is that we aren't just putting out the resources that we know are available, but we're listening to what the growers' concerns are, what they're still struggling with, and that goes into the development of future resources. The resources we create or collate are a combination of print PDF resources. They're out there, they're available, we print them, we hand them out, but honestly, I think the responsive web and the blog posts are really the go-to that are most accessed or most user-friendly to share with the bulk of our audience. But what I mean by responsive web is that Chris has actually worked to develop some applications, not in the sense that you have to download an app, but a responsive web page or online calculator to easily calculate things like sanitizer dosages, whether it's for your wash water or sanitization of surfaces. So things like that to kind of make those simple calculations a little bit easier and more accessible is one of the resources that we've pulled together. And then largely we've been expanding video, audio, and social media resources. These could be video case studies on farms. They could be just photos demonstrating good examples or not good examples. And we share this on social media. A lot of growers are on Instagram, and we've had really good feedback sharing our resources there. There are several resources that are already available on the clearinghouse that are accessible to everybody, but farmers are not always going to the clearinghouse. I view that as kind of a resource for us as educators. So we've collated a a web page dedicated that kind of breaks down and makes it easy to find kind of the most frequently viewed stuff, which includes produce safety training, water, hygienic and sanitary design, standard operating procedures training, and then a variety of case studies and examples. And these short links on the bottom here go to our 3 web pages. go.uvm.edu/scrub brings you right to the project page. /scrub resources is this list that we've reviewed as a team and kind of pulled out the best, so to speak. And then the clearinghouse as well, obviously. For example, here is an example of a situation where we noticed a problem in a farm cooler, bad cracked concrete floors. We had minimal experience fixing this, but instead of just going to the farmer and saying, you need to fix your cracked floor, we took the time to sit down and learn how to do it with them, took pictures along the way, put together a blog post. Now we have photos and video clips and a blog post curating how to fix your floor, and we built the experience by doing that as well. So this is, oddly enough, one of our most popular videos on YouTube, and it's only like a 5-minute thing on how to fix a concrete floor. Another example is cleaning tools. Cleaning tools is a big one. Farmers love these cleaning tools. Their crew loves them because they're made with hygienic design and easy to clean themselves. We've got a blog post highlighting the color coding. These are suggestions on your farm. They're not enforced so much that they would be in a food production facility as it is on a farm, but trying to make this a little bit standardized or at least thought-provoking. I've also assembled essentially videos explaining what these cleaning tools are. It's assembled both as a 20-minute video going everything from a brush to a bucket to scrub brushes, handles, so be it. And then I also broke them down into 1-minute clips, shared them once a week, every week on Instagram for like 6 months last year. And then I constantly had people coming to me, hey, those cleaning tools are super great. Thanks for doing that. So it's really well received. And you can see we took these to learn from ourselves. We took totes of these to 3 or 4 different farms, learned which tools work good to find our farmer favorites, which is another resource we put together. These are those scrub shorts that I put together, so there's a whole handful of videos just talking, like there's a 60-second video just talking about squeegees. Who knew there was 3 different kinds of squeegees? But whether you have got a smooth and polished concrete floor or a rough concrete floor, it does actually make a difference which one you choose. These are some of the case studies we have available. We've highlighted 13 different farms across 3 different formats, like I said, blog post, PDF, and video. Everything ranges from an acre market garden farm who's being super successful and built a really nice wash pack to 20, 30 acre farms who's invested $250,000 in infrastructure. So we've got a wide examples here because every farm is different. So hopefully you can find something that's similar to yours and glean some tips and key takeaways out of it. That's my presentation. I'll be around if you have questions.
Thanks, Andy. We're going to move right along for now to Billy Mitchell. We can have some questions when we regroup on this topic after lunch. Billy Mitchell is going to be talking about the use of, I think, some mobile and educational platforms.
That's right.
Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, Chris. You have to teach me how to use this PowerPoint, though.
Sorry. So you got the clicker there? The green one moves forward. Nope, above. Yep, that'll do it.
Okay, we'll see. Hey, y'all, my name is Billy Mitchell. I wear a couple different hats, part of the local Food Safety Collaborative, but also just a food safety enthusiast and educator, and I'm talking about one of the projects that I collaborate on. It's a USDA NIFA-funded project called Mobile Farm Innovation Units. There's actually a much longer title, but this is the title that I used to describe it. I am at the front of the room today, but honestly, it's much more like this picture where I'm just tucked away in the back, because this is very much a collaborative project between farmers in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, community-based organizations like the Mississippi Minority Farmers Alliance, Deep South Food Alliance, and then education extension agents like Dr. Elizabeth Miles from Elkhorn State or Dr. Kristen Woods, my hero, who recently moved over to Tuskegee University. But that is the biggest part of this project. It sounds so simple to work together, and we all know how hard it can be, but the community collaboration piece has what's made this so successful. We identified 3 big barriers that we're going to try to overcome. One for farmers is time and cost, and that's the time and cost for the farmers to come to us for educational opportunities. We want to be able to come to the farmers. So we developed these trailers, these mobile farm innovation units seen behind me. And this is very much based on a model from Dr. George Washington Carver and his colleagues at Tuskegee University, the Jessup Wagons, which is bringing the university out to the farm. So we're able to go to the communities, community centers, rural farms, extension offices, work with them to let them know the programming we have. And inside these trailers are a bunch of hands-on learning activities. And originally, we were going to bring people into the trailer. COVID happened, and that felt real weird. And it's honestly worked out much better because now we bring everything out of the trailer and we set it up around a community center. There's a bunch of space to move around, and the energy is really good. The second barrier is that for most of the growers, we're working with their small acreage and their limited resource growers. To overcome this barrier, one, we just want to make sure that these growers feel like they are represented in what we're creating. And so you can see that the photos on the trailer and all our resources, these are pictures that look like the farmers we work with and look like their operations. We're also creating resources for people that might have a small flock, like maybe 8 goats instead of 80 goats, or 1 acre instead of 10, 20, 100 acres. We also have a paid farmer review panel that help us develop these resources, and then we show them the resources, and they offer very honest, really good feedback, something that drives Dr. Kristen Woods just totally bananas. You might have heard her mention this, is they asked us to remove pathogens from all our fact sheets and use the word germs. They're just we don't use the word pathogen. We use germs. That's what's going to work with our community. And the third thing we did is we recognized that for most of our audience, presentation like this, just sitting all day, is not their preferred way of learning. We're trying to do hands-on education. And also, and don't take this the wrong way, but food safety is not always the number one concern. So we talked about something very important to them, providing safe food to their community, but also conserving their land. So everything that we teach, these hands-on activities, balance food safety and conservation needs. Here you can see Dr. Kristen Woods, and this is our trailer. And this is at the Mississippi Minority Farmers Alliance building. And so we literally bring these trailers out. It's pretty amazing, this building. You can pull the trailer into the building, and we start to unload all the different activities. Just about everything is hands-on. There's also a technology aspect. We've got this big TV that we can set up and let people get on their phones. We have tablets, laptops, also to access some of those online tools like making a farm map with Google Maps or how to use the PSA-labeled sanitizer tool. But we work with people, in particular people who might not have really good internet access or may not be as computer literate, to take some of the stress out, to practice, to train, to access different types of tools. But the real bread and butter of the project are these hands-on activities. We have about 9 different activities, and we'll work with the community group and say, this is our suite. This is our menu of educational offerings. What do you think would work best with your farmers? What do you want us to focus on this time? And then we'll come back in a year, we'll come back in 6 months and do a couple more activities. I'll just use this as an example. So let's say that community group said, we just want to do 3 activities. We want to do water sampling, cleaning and sanitizing, and cold storage. We set up those activities around the room, 3 different areas, and this takes a lot of people so that these stations are all happening at once. Each thing is about 20 minutes. This is high impact HIT workshops. Tricia, you know about the 20-minute exercises. We were talking about that earlier. But people come in, and first of all, it's a conversation. We say, well, why is water sampling important? And we have a discussion with the farmers. There's always going to be a couple farmers who've never sampled their water and a couple farmers who have. So we allow that informal education to happen. There's a discussion happening. Then a farmer and a trainer will show that practice. We'll show how to do water testing. And then everyone has an opportunity to practice that practice, to give them the chance to build confidence, to show that you can do this. This is practical. Another one is this cold storage. This is me and Miss Felicia Bell from NCAT. We're talking about why cold storage is important. We're talking about different ways to save energy, increase produce quality, decrease produce safety risks. We're showing how to connect a CoolBot, but what you can't see in this picture is that everyone else in the audience are also using CoolBots. They're putting it together, they're talking, so it's very much discussion-based. These trainings are really fun. It is like very buzzy. The amount of laughter, sharing that's happening, it just feels really good, and it's really nice because we do get invited back. We also hope that it's kind of a train-the-trainer model, that when we leave, the farmers and community members who came can then go back to their farming communities, the people who couldn't make the events, and teach. So we've created videos, fact sheets, and facilitator guides. The facilitator guides share some key points around cleaning and sanitizing. They share the materials you might need for employee training or training other people in your community, and then just break down how long it should take, which we hope is about 20 minutes. And thank you, Tricia, for these beautiful designs. And everything is available, I think, on the Resource Clearinghouse. Just about everything is up there. And then finally, our impacts and outcomes. Y'all, Kristen Woods is so good at data collection. She is amazing at this community building aspect of extension work and this collecting the data. And so we've done these great focus groups to collect qualitative data, but also the pre and post tests for quantitative data. And a few things have emerged from doing these workshops over the years. One is that these hands-on experiential learning activities improve just awareness of produce safety and conservation practices. The second is that by doing these activities, we've improved the confidence in doing these practices on their farm, and we've also improved the intent to implement these practices. People are more aware, they're more confident they can do it, and they say, we are going to do it. We've also come to realize that the benefit of these practices can be influenced and sometimes outweighed by other factors. Mostly, I'm just preaching to the choir here, but you all know it's time and cost. Really finding practical, cost-effective ways to implement these. And that this community-based education creates space for conversation, like these groups of farmers who got to meet each other, but it also creates space for collaboration. Us being able to work with different community-based organizations around Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. And it's just been really neat to be invited back every 6 months, year after year. We're about to go back to somewhere for the 3rd year. And each year we do something new, we do some of the old ones, and it's so great to see some of the farmers come back year after year, and they share about how they've implemented these practices in their community, and they share what they've talked to about with their other community members. That's it.
Before I turn it over to Jeff, I kind of want to orient everybody to what is the intent behind the presentations. So we had 2 presentations right before lunch, the Scrub Project and the Farm Innovation Trailer Project. And next, Jeff is going to talk about education to plain set growers. And these projects were picked specifically because they take a unique approach to educational delivery. They are specifically asking themselves, what is the barrier that my audience is facing when it comes to educational delivery? They think about an approach tailored to specifically address those needs, and then they deliver content in a way that's specific to the audience that they're trying to serve. And I think you see in these examples a lot of multimedia types of outputs, some low-tech, some high-tech, some varying different types of technology. One thing that Billy mentioned is they ask us for specific, they ask us for specific hand-on things, and that's what we deliver to them. We don't go in and say, here's all 20 or however many examples they had, but we start with what they need, and we go from there. And the idea with this program is intentional. This is a built program with the idea of starting from this broader landscape of thinking about educational needs for our audience. We've moved beyond needing to just deliver PSA grower trainings, right? That's years we spent delivering educational PSA curriculum. And we are now at a point where people are saying, what's next? How do I operationalize this? How do I start to think about implementing these practices on the farm? And perhaps re-delivering the PSA grower training is not going to get them there. it was meant to be a starting point, but how do we take them to the next step? And so the projects that were highlighted today are 3 examples of just unique approaches to thinking about how they might start to deliver that. And so the idea of today's breakout groups is to start unpacking that with our own audience, our own growers, our own communities that we work in. And then tomorrow, talking to the regulators about the compliance issues that they're seeing and kind of customizing that to specific topics within the produce safety rule and preventive controls rule. So I just kind of wanted to provide that framework because I think it probably wasn't clear and perhaps maybe was a little lost in the transition, but the goal of these presentations, like I said, is what's the barrier, what was the approach, and what were the successes or lessons learned from taking those approaches. And so the breakout groups this afternoon will start to think a little bit about these things ourselves. So as we start to think about how can we help these growers, how can we do that collaboratively, how can we lean on the expertise of the other people in our region, how can we form teams? I mean, if you saw the list of partners in these projects, this wasn't one person out there. This was large groups of people bringing those expertise together in order to kind of fill that need. These are, it's big, it's a lot of work. So kind of just thinking about that. So this is just sort of the start to that conversation. The goal of these presentations is to maybe, give you some ideas, oh, that was interesting, like, oh, that's a fun thing, whatever, and just kind of stimulate some thought. So with that, I'm going to give it to Jeff. Where's Jeff? And Jeff, I love to watch Jeff present. I've had the opportunity twice, and he's a captivating speaker, so I'm pleased to have him. Not that everyone else is not, but Jeff is especially captivating, so I'm happy to have Jeff here, and I'll turn it over to Jeff, so thanks.
Well, thanks. That kind of sets a pretty high bar. But as I thought about this presentation, and so I work a lot with plain folks, and I thought, we've had to come up with some low technology ways when you're dealing with Amish and Mennonites, and it just seemed wrong to stand up there with a PowerPoint slides and talk about low technology. So I thought, we'll do this the way we do our FSMA trainings. We'll get right down here and get personal. And when we started this project, and I mean Dr. Luke Laborde, who had a grant to develop an alternative curriculum for the Plain community. And so initially you think, well, they speak Pennsylvania German, so do we need to do this training in Pennsylvania German? And we had an Amish fellow, Benny Yoder, on our advisory board. Benny is a FSMA trainer, and I said, Benny, I think I know the answer to this, but tell me, do you want a training in Pennsylvania German? And he said, no, Pennsylvania German's just a dialect. Our kids all learn English when they go to school. He said, but what I would really like is a training in plain English. So I told Betsy Ben that. I said, Benny really would like to have a training in plain English. And she just laughed and said, yeah, him and 50,000 other farmers. And so the problem wasn't the curriculum or the language that it was in. The problem was, how do you deliver the FSMA curriculum in a place where you may not have electricity and you may not have all that technology? So we went round and round about how to do this. Should we do flip charts? Should we do, what's a good way to do this? So the idea that Luke and I and Benny came up with was to put the FSMA curriculum. Luke, I should get you to be my model here. You want to hold this? You got to smile if you're going to be my model. So what we did was we took the slide series and we took the slides and put them, very simple idea. We put them in a notebook. We put 3 or 4 slides to 2 slides to a page. As you flip the page, you've got 4 slides. So instead of standing in front of the folks with a PowerPoint and having me turn my back to you half of the presentation, we put this all in a book. So now the growers can flip through that, and I can have that book right in front of me. So now instead of standing up here or back there in the corner somewhere with a clicker and having to turn my back to you every slide to see what's going on, I can stand right out in the middle of the room. And I learned years ago when you're teaching high school kids that proximity is really all about how you manage a classroom. And I found that the same is true when you're dealing with adults. So the closer you get, then the more often the phones get put under the table, the laptops go down, because people, feel like they have to pay more attention because you're right there in their midst. And so I found as an educator, I like this way of doing it almost better than PowerPoint. And if you've ever worked much with Amish communities, they are very interactive. They will chat, ask questions. The other the other barrier we found, though, is we need to think really hard about where we do trainings. So the Connecticut Convention Center, and by the way, we have these available for free. Contact Luke.
Make it clear, these are reusable. The grower does not take this home. It's just analogous to a slide. The grower doesn't take the slides home. The grower must have the produce manual, the grower's manual, and then they display this. We shared it between two people. So then the teacher can gather these up at the end and reuse them. That's why when we're offering them up to 20 of them for free, if you're going to teach Amish.
And it was a bit of a challenge to get some of those pictures from the PSA slides into this form. Depending on the quality of the original picture, it didn't always work well. Once we get to version 2.0, then somebody else will have to do this all over again. And Luke emphasizes the somebody else will have to do that all over again. So it has worked really well. We've done these in shops, we've done them in houses, we've done them in fire halls, we've done them in basements, we've done them in stripping rooms. We've done things, so it's a very portable thing. We can go anywhere with it. And that's probably more important than the curriculum itself, is where do you do these trainings? The Connecticut Convention Center is not going to be a great place to do an Amish training, all right? They can't get here from there. And I find that even in Lancaster County, I have to be careful where I do trainings, right? Because if I do them in Lancaster, if I do them at our extension office, there's no way you can get there with a horse and buggy. So it's really important when you think of these communities, and as I do these talks on working with Amish communities, it's really the same if I was working with an inner-city Hispanic community or any ethnic group. We all have those places where we feel more comfortable. We all have our spaces where we feel comfortable. You all might not feel real comfortable if we held this conference at the Southern Lancaster County Fairgrounds. They're not going to feel real comfortable here. So think about those things, and we've done that a lot. We've worked closely with those folks. We've allowed them to pick the venue. We've allowed them to organize the meal, and that has worked really well. In Pennsylvania, probably 60 to 70% of our covered growers, covered by FSMA, are probably Plain community. They probably make up half of our produce acreage. So they're a significant portion. We did, 2,000, we trained 2,000 growers. In Pennsylvania, probably well over half of those have been Plain community. We've done probably a dozen trainings that were exclusively in the Plain community. Some Amish, we've had Amish at most of our trainings. There are a few Amish that will not sit through PowerPoint slides, even if we have electric and even if we have power. I'd say they're probably 10 to 15% of our Amish community. The rest of them don't mind slides, but you have what we call the lower churches, the more conservative churches that really want to see something a little more like this. But we've used this with some of the higher churches just because some of the places, the venues that they have where we've done the trainings have been without power. So you either have to get a generator. I actually did a training last week in Center County. We powered the computer off an inverter and a battery that they had in a co-op there. So you have to think through all those things when we set up these trainings. But I think the key in working with them is to work with them as far as where the location is and how it's organized. They do a great job of marketing it. If I go into a produce auction and they tell me they want to do a meeting there, I don't have to send out mailers. I don't have to run it through our marketing. They put 50 people in the room, and we do a training. One other thing that we have done, Luke came up with this many years ago. It's a worker training flip chart. This is the Spanish one. It looks just like the Plain Community one. It looks so much like it that I grabbed the wrong one when I came. But the grower would read the words on the back. Thank you. And then there's a picture on the front. So a couple years ago, we said, this is really great, especially with Hispanic workers. Why don't we come up with one for our Plain community? And so we did. We changed the pictures. It's been the primary change. We did change some emphasis on some of the issues. We now emphasize the toilet use less with the Amish community. We emphasize working with animals a little bit more. But we have these both for the Spanish and for the Plain community farms as well. That's not free. That's $25. Any questions?
I work a lot with the Spanish community, the worker force in the West Massachusetts, and they don't like that version. So I created another one based on the Facebook, and I made a video. So they like that better. So on the first time that I was using that, it was like, we're not stupid. Why are you showing these pictures? Well, I basically create a video showing the same pictures, but now it's like to their liking. So I had focus groups and I asked questions and I create this material for them. So maybe, we need to step up a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. And a lot of this is, too often we do education from the top down, and we really need to be doing it from the bottom up and hearing what our community really needs and how they want these trainings done and where they want them done. Yes.
I have a question. How is the book that you put together different than the grower training manual that they get?
So good question. The difference between this and the grower training, we don't have any of the presenter notes in there or the other the notes and references. It is nothing but slides, just the slides. And so the challenge that we found somewhat is that at times they have to flip two manuals. Now they're having to flip this one, and they're also having to keep up with their grower manual. I would like to see, I like this from a presenter standpoint because it's easy for me to see the slides. I know some trainers who have done this, and they just use the manuals for the participants and not these slide sets. The problem that we had, or PSA and FDA, the concern they had was the slides in the grower manual are a little too small to really be seen that well. And so that's why we wanted to do something here that was a little bit bigger, so the slides were a little bit bigger. So, yeah.
Did you mention where we can get these free booklets?
You're going to be teaching that way. You can get up to 20 with a code, a secret code. That you get from me. LFL5@psu.edu. But while supplies last, up to 20. And they are reusable, so you should be intending to reuse them, gather them at the end. Now here's the issue. This was version 1.1, and then we negotiated when 1.2 came with PSA, and they said, well, as long as you include the supplementary. Now with version 2.0, I don't know what's going to happen here. But I would encourage PSA, where are you, PSA? Nobody. Okay. Oh, okay.
They can hear you. They can hear you,
To
Luke.
think about getting out of the PowerPoint paradigm somehow, like this, because I'm going to retire in a couple of years, and I don't feel like doing this again. But for now, this will work fine. Okay. Oh, and being an academic, we wrote a paper on this. If you go Penn State Produce Safety Amish, okay, you'll get a whole page on everything we've done for the Amish, including a copy of the evaluation paper where we compared results with PowerPoint and this method, both Amish, and in the Journal of Amish and Anabaptist Studies, and we had that published, and you can read all about the project there. Okay, just Penn State, Amish, Produce Safety, something like that.
So I'd like to also open up for questions for either Billy Mitchell and Andy Chamberlain from the presentations before lunch. Remember those? All right, good. So all your questions from before lunch. The floor is open.
One great point that Billy made before lunch, and it's true with the Plain community as well, is speak the language. We all have professional languages that we speak, and Chuck could probably tell you he's just learning our language here today. But you know, when you talk to the Plain community, Lindsay, was that you that we're in the training? No, at the end of the day, we went through the FSMA slides. Someone had no idea what fecal matter was. Feces. Yeah, what's feces? So now we call it poop. It's just like you said with germs and pathogens. Think about those terms that we assume that we know because we do food safety all the time. Make sure you speak their language.
Other questions? Yeah.
I just have a statement. Also, keep in mind some cultures don't like photography, and so be respectful of that before you start taking photos, and social media also.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Back to you, Elizabeth.